When is the last time you saw your neighbor taking out the trash and you thought, that dude probably stashes bodies in the woods? Right? You don't think like that. Most people don't think like that anyway, but maybe we should. Israel Keys ran a construction business. He showed up on time, he had a kid, went on family vacations, paid for things in cash, and kept to himself. Nothing about him really set off any alarms. He built his life to blend in. He studied what got other killers caught and figured out how to sidestep every single one of those mistakes. He planted kill kits years in advance. He picked victims with zero connection to himself. He flew across the country, murdered strangers, and went home like it was just another Tuesday. This is not a murder story about chaos. It's about patience, precision, and a guy who treated murder like a side hustle, with an escape plan in every state. This is part 1 of 2 parts on Israel Keys. Let's get into it. Israel Keys wasn't living in a bunker or hiding out in the woods. He owned a construction business in Anchorage, drove a pickup, showed up on time, had a girlfriend, a young daughter, and neighbors who thought he was quiet but normal. He spent weekends fishing, took Caribbean cruises, paid in cash, held the door open at the gas station for people walking in. While everyone else was going about their lives, Keys was planning murders with military precision. He studied case files and FBI reports, followed other killers, took notes on what worked and what didn't work. He flew across the country with burner phones and empty backpacks. He buried kill kits in random states, each one filled with guns, cash, zip ties, gloves, and cleaning supplies. Some sat in the ground for years before he came back to use them. He picked victims by chance, isolated trails, remote houses, people with no ties to him. Then he got in, got out, and disappeared. He robbed banks to cover his travel, took long drives through back roads, used prepaid debit cards. He knew what left a trace, and he avoided it. For over a decade, no one noticed, not because he got lucky, because he planned every move. Then, one night, in his own city, he stepped outside his routine. He picked someone nearby, took a risk. And that's when the walls started to crack. Israel Keys was born in Cove, Utah in 1978, second of 10 kids in a family that rejected almost everything mainstream. No public schools, no doctors, and absolutely no government. His parents packed up when he was little and moved the family deep into the Washington wilderness. They lived in a cabin with no electricity, no running water, no connection to the outside world. The goal wasn't just to live off-grid. It was to raise a family completely detached from the rest of society. They jumped from one fringe church to another until settling into a white supremacist Christian sect that made isolation feel like salvation. That's the world Israel grew up in. Even in a household like that, he stood out. The other kids played and prayed. Israel hunted. He stole guns from neighbors and broke into homes just to see what was inside. He tortured animals. He tied up the family cat and shot it. He cut open a deer and watched it bleed, not out of anger, curiosity. Nobody stepped in. No teachers, no neighbors, no system. When he finally told his parents he didn't believe in God, his father cut him off. That was it. One decision and he was out. No diploma, no safety net, no more family. He went looking for structure. He found it in the U.S. Army. In 1998, Israel Keys joined the Army. He trained at Fort Leonard Wood. He served at Fort Hood and Fort Lewis. He deployed once to Egypt. He followed orders, kept to himself, passed every test. Most people saw him as reliable and unremarkable. After his discharge in 2001, he moved to Nia Bay, Washington, took a job as a contractor, became a dad. Neighbors knew him as the quiet guy who showed up on time, and kept to his work. He later admitted he started killing not long after leaving the military. 4 victims while living in Washington. No names, no reports, no bodies to tell of. He picked isolated spots, trails, lakes, remote roads. He planned every step, where to park, where to leave the body, how to leave the area without being seen. Once, after dumping a body in Lake Crescent, he asked investigators how long a corpse would stay submerged in cold water. He already knew. He buried kill kits across the country, buckets packed with weapons, cash, masks, gloves, and chemicals. Some stayed hidden for years before he returned to use them. When he traveled, he didn't need to stop for supplies. Everything was already in place. Israel Keyes left nothing to chance. He read case files, studied other killers, took notes on where they slipped up. Then he built a system that worked for him. He buried the weapons, the cash, the zip ties. He had disguises he would use in random spots across the country. Rural trails, fishing spots, behind gas stations. These weren't panic moves. These were step-by-step murder kits stashed years in advance and ready to go. He picked his victim's identity by opportunity. A house with an open garage, a hiking trail with no one around, a car parked off a back road. He chose areas with low traffic and no surveillance. He paid in cash, kept his phone turned off, took long drives to nowhere with no one asking questions. His victims had no connection to him, and the scenes he left behind had nothing that pointed back. The timing was always in his favor. He used work trips and vacations as cover, left on flights with no luggage, slept in cheap motels, ate fast food, and drove rental cars. He treated every step like part of a checklist. Keyes robbed banks to fund these trips. He broke into homes to scout neighborhoods. Sometimes he burned the place down on his way out. When the killing was done, he cleaned up, tossed the tools, and left town. Didn't brag, didn't make headlines, just back to his everyday normal life. He blended in because he built his life to blend in. It wasn't accidental. That was the point. February 1st, 2012, Anchorage, Alaska. Samantha Koenig was working alone at a coffee kiosk, finishing up her shift. It was dark, it was cold, and business had slowed for the night. She was texting with her boyfriend and getting ready to close. A man walked up to the window. He wore a ski mask and asked for coffee. Samantha turned her back for a second, and when she faced the window again, there was a gun pointed at her. He told her to turn the lights off. She followed his instructions. Then he climbed inside. Surveillance cameras caught some of it, her hands in the air, her body stiff, the lights going dark. Israel Keyes walked her away from the stand and vanished into the night. She didn't come home. Her boyfriend got a text the next day, supposedly from her, saying she needed a break and had gone out of town. But the wording was off. Her dad knew something was wrong. He called the police. The investigation moved quickly. Officers reviewed the security footage and saw a man, masked man, and they started tracking her cell phone and debit card. Nothing made sense in this case. Samantha didn't live recklessly. She didn't just disappear. 10 days later, a text came in. A location, a park. Under a flyer for a missing dog, pinned to a bulletin board, was a photo and a typed ransom note. The photo showed Samantha holding a newspaper from 4 days earlier. The ransom note demanded $30,000 deposited into her bank account. Her dad put in a partial payment. That night, someone withdrew the cash from her account at an ATM in Anchorage, then another withdrawal in Arizona, then New Mexico, then Texas. The FBI tracked the route and found surveillance footage of a white Ford Focus near one of the ATMs. The plate was visible. They traced the rental, found out who had it, and waited. On March 13, a Texas state trooper spotted the car near Lufkin. He pulled it over for speeding. Behind the wheel was Israel Keyes. Inside the car was Samantha's ATM card, her cell phone, a gun, a mask, and a roll of cash. They had their suspect. Now, they needed the truth. When investigators pulled over Israel Keyes in Texas, he gave them nothing. Calm voice, normal ID, no panic, but the car gave them everything. They found Samantha Koenig's ATM card, her phone, a loaded gun, dark clothes, and a mask. He was flown back to Anchorage. At first, he claimed he found the card, claimed he had nothing to do with Samantha. Then he stopped talking. That silence didn't last. He told them he targeted her with no plan, walked up to her stand, pulled a gun, and forced her into his truck. He brought her home, tied her up in a shed, assaulted her, killed her. The next morning, he took a pre-booked flight out of Alaska and boarded a cruise with his girlfriend and daughter. He ate shrimp, drank cocktails, and smiled for family photos. 2 weeks later, he returned to Alaska, posed her body with a newspaper, took a photo, and used it to demand a ransom. He cut her up, drove to a frozen lake, and dropped her into the water. Then he stayed and fished. Investigators recovered her remains. Everything he told them matched. Then he offered more. Names, cities, timelines, but only if they promised him an execution date. He didn't want a trial, didn't want cameras. While they considered it, he kept talking. The interviews added up. Each one filled in more of the timeline. Each time he spoke, they realized they weren't looking at one case. They were tracking a man who had been perfecting this for years. Thanks for listening to 10-Minute Murder, bingeable true crime stories. I'm Joe, the host, and Israel Keyes built a life that looked normal on the surface, but underneath he was planning murders like logistics jobs. Every move was calculated, every tool already in place. In the next episode, Israel starts talking. Confessions, kill kits, victims without names. And the FBI realizes the story is way bigger than they initially thought. Episode 2 of Israel Keyes is next. I'll see you there.